Hi there, Brian Pop Robson here. We're used to hoax protagonists endlessly going on about missing telemetry tapes for Apollo 11. The one thing they do fail to address, however, is exactly what the tapes were and why they were made. When you have idiots such as Randy Walsh, Scott Henderson addressing the missing tapes, the one question that always stumps them: please explain exactly what data is missing from Apollo 11. I mean, they Randy Walsh has turned around and said, well, it's the telemetry data. What is it? This drawing explains it. All the information from the moon, TV, audio, biosystems data, the actual systems data from the Apollo craft itself, was multiplexed together and broadcast to the Earth via the lunar module's S-band antenna. This arrived multiplexed together and at the three Earth stations, Parkes, Honeysuckle Creek and Goddard, and was demultiplexed and sent via landlines and satellite links to Mission Control at Houston. The various data were recorded at Mission Control Centre and displayed to the world. I mean, some of the biometric data you would have seen, it was on people's screens, but that was all recorded. There was voice recordings for the Vox communications, etc. And this formed the data source for Apollo 11. To say any data was missing from that record is at best misinformation, at worst a blatant lie. But unknown to a lot of NASA employees and the rest of the world, because of the importance of the event, the NASA had a backup plan should this live feed to NASA, to MCC, ever fail. They used big M22 recorders, and the full telemetry that was being back from the moon was backed up onto inch-wide tape. The tape was wound onto 14-inch wide reels. Each tape had a duration of 15 minutes, and basically the intention was that should the live feed from the Earth stations to NASA fail, the tape would be rewound and the data restored. However, that never happened, so the tapes were never ever played. So they were never used. So say that this was a prime source of data is wrong. They were a backup for a contingency that never ever happened. Now, because of the mission duration, there was literally thousands of these tapes, and they sat at the Earth stations for a little while. They dutifully boxed them up and sent them off to Goddard. They sat at Goddard for a good few months, and they were reviewed and people wondered what to do with them. There was literally no use for them. So they were sent off to the Washington National Records Center, the WNRC. Basically, that would have been the end of the story. People basically forgot about them. If it wasn't for one phone call, all the hoax theorists, etc., would probably have never have heard of them. They would have been unaware that they even existed, so this would have been another string that they'd been missing from their bow. Now, the reason it came to light as an issue, we need to look at the TV broadcast, which I'm now showing in the background. Everyone remembers or has seen the fuzzy ghost-like images of Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin descending the ladders. The reason for this is because the 4.5 kilohertz transmission bandwidths of the day was not able to be used for Apollo 11. They was given a 500 hertz bandwidth, to use, and they had to come up with an ingenious way of doing that. They went to a company called Westinghouse. One of the prime engineers in this was a man called Stan LeBar, and they reduced the frame rates from 10 frames a second to 10 frames a second from 30 frames a second, and instead of having the standard 525 lines, they went down to 320 lines. What few people realised at the time was the quality of these images being beamed back to Earth was of higher quality than what was seen by us. A few of the engineers could see them on the monitors, and the pitch quality wasn't too bad. The reason for this was the way the signal was dealt with at the earth stations. It was basically rescanned by some equipment made by RCA. Yeah, that made a converter that changed the 320 lines 10 frames per second to a standard NTSC 520 line 30 frames per second signal, because the TV people couldn't accept the STV standard. However, the mission was deemed a huge success, and the fuzzy images were really accepted, and nobody except a few people were unhappy. Stan LaBarbe was stunned by the poor quality and was unhappy that the image was not as clear and crisp as he expected. He knew the camera was capable of producing good quality images despite the reduced bandwidth, but at the time he was unaware of the conversion techniques used. NASA never used this technology again. Yeah, they got higher bandwidth because they used an S-band antenna on the programs, and the rover on the 15 to 17 missions was used as a standard S-band transmission technique. This is where the story would have ended, but a guy called John Sarkisyan began researching the whereabouts of the tapes in 1997. A British author asked the question, which was the Earth station that broadcast the actual transmission from the moon at the time? And he done a long investigation into this. This started in 1996, I believe. 1997 this started. In 2001, he found a couple of Polaroids taken at parks that showed that the actual image quality was a lot better than they originally, what was shown to the world. And it was this that started the search for the tapes. Again, this is another Polaroid from the actual Earth stations. There is a whole story attached to the search for the tapes, and the conclusion that were probably degaussed and not deliberately destroyed, as people say. Basically, whale oil was used in the binding of the tapes, and although they did try to make synthetic copies of it, they used to stick, and the magnetic material would peel away from the binding when the tapes aged. If you want to do a full research of the search, I can point you to the Apollo Telemetry Data's recording the final report, and a link for that is included in the video description. So basically I could go on, but I like my videos nice and short, so hopefully that's enough to be getting on with. Anyway, Brian Pop Robson, bye.